right, so hi everybody, I'm Charissa.
Hi.
If you haven't met me in person, you might have seen me in Slack. I'm usually posting memes or dog pictures or asking you to send me dog pictures. It's true. Too. I work at Bluebeam. I work with James, Ellen, and Juan here. Feel free to talk to any of us about Bluebeam after this. We'll be more than happy to tell you what we do. And tonight, I'm going to talk to you all about pair programming best practices according to me and some articles that I found online. So go ahead and get started. So if you haven't done pair programming before or you haven't heard of it, it might sound like a scary thing. You might think, okay, cool, so people are going to watch me write code. That sounds awful. But that's not what it is at all. We actually have two programmers working on one story at a time. One of them is a driver, one's a navigator. And I'll get into those roles in a minute. We'll kind of dig into those. And so it works as a team. It's not one person watching someone code, and it's not one person judging you while you write code. That would be terrible. All right, so this is pair programming. That's how you do it. Right? So I don't know, I got this from, I don't know if anyone has watched NCIS, but there's an episode where they're being hacked and two of the agents share a keyboard. So I always think of this. And that's Chloe, she's a member here, because some of you might have met her. So to start, I'm going to go over mobbing. Mobbing is like pairing, but it's when there's more than two programmers. So some of you might have had this happen where you're at your desk working on something and someone comes over to help you and you both get stuck, and the next thing you know, the whole team of engineers is behind you. So that's one way of mobbing. There's another more organized way where you can all get in a room together and you have designated drivers and you take turns driving and everybody else navigates. So that's the same thing. It's not just you in a room with 10 or more people watching you code. They're helping you through it. They're telling you what to type. So as the driver, you're never just typing and saying, here's what I'm doing. It's the people who are navigating, and you're the driver. And the navigators are saying, okay, here's the first step. We're going to type this for the solution. Here's the next step. We're going to type this. And as a navigator, it's probably the next slide. We should hit next. Okay, we're going to start with the driver. I lied. So like I was saying, as the driver, you have the keyboard. You have control of what's being typed, but you don't just start typing on your own. Because that's called running away, which is my point on here, no running away. And have any of you ever played that game with your friends where you're in the car and the door's locked and they reach and you pretend you're going to unlock it, but you don't. So you're like, okay, it's unlocked, and then they reach and you lock it again. That's what I think of when you're running away. Your navigator's trying to help you. You're like, no, hang on, I got it. So you want to make sure you don't do that, because you want to make sure that you're working together to solve the problem. You're not just having them watch you. They're not just dictating exactly what you do. You're working together. And sometimes as the driver, like we talked about just a few moments ago, if there's 10 people behind you and everybody's saying, hey, code this, it can be overwhelming. You can think, okay, hang on, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what to type anymore. Why are you guys all yelling at me? So you want some kind of signal to show that you're overwhelmed. So something you can do is you can just take your hands off the keyboard and you can just wait until they notice. You say, you know what, everybody's talking at once. I can't hear 5 people at the same time. I need you to slow down one at a time. Tell me what to do. At work, where I work, we do a lot of pair programming, and I've been having fun saying that the overwhelm signal is this. So you just throw your hands up, and it's funny. People get to laugh, but then you also get to say, okay, but this is a little too much. So let's take a couple steps back. Either recap what we just went over, or just move a little more slowly, because I'm new to this part of the code and I need a little more explanation. So that is driving. Navigating is the opposite, like we were saying. So as a navigator, you want to make sure that you talk to your driver, you understand your driver's level. So if your driver is someone that's been coding for years, you don't want to tell them, okay, so you're going to type out function and you're going to do 2 parentheses and you're going to do a curly bracket. They know that. You don't need to micro-navigate and tell them what to do. So you can just tell them, okay, here's step 1. Let's get this to work. Okay, well, now we need to go over here and get this to work. But on the opposite side of that, get out of there.
You can tell Java to get out.
Get out. Okay.
You can just skip it.
Remind
Nobody
me later.
cares about it.
Sorry. I will annoy you with that later. All right. But novice drivers. So if your driver is a novice, you want to make sure that you don't just jump in and say, all right, you know what, we're going to do this recursive function, because they're going to look and say, no, we're not. or they're gonna panic inside and throw their arms up. So you wanna make sure that you tell them. In that case, you might need to tell them what the syntax is, and you might need to spell things out a little bit more. And you can take that as a time to mentor and explain why you're making the technical decisions that you're making. Yes. Oh yeah, also, before I move on, I wanna make sure I mention be respectful. So one way to not be a navigator is to start laughing at people as soon as they get stuck. You want to make sure that you listen to them as they talk, and drivers want to make sure that they do that too. You know, if your navigator says something that seems crazy, you don't want to run away. So I don't think anybody here would have a problem with that though, because we're all awesome. So one thing that can happen when you're pairing is that you can get mentally fatigued. I know if you're driving all day, you get tired, you can get frustrated because you can be stuck on the same thing, and you can be listening to your navigator but going through solutions in your own head too, and you just get tired of it. You need a break. So you need to make sure that you take a break for everybody. And then because the navigator, they're going to get tired too. You know, they're talking, they're thirsty, they're hungry, they're hangry. Who knows? It's important to take breaks so that you can switch roles and both of you can have a turn driving and navigating. Nobody's getting overwhelmed. You also want to make sure that you're not doing it too often though. So you don't want to type a few lines of code, commit it, switch, a few lines of code, commit it, switch, because then that's too much overhead and you're not getting anything out of pairing anymore. You're just trying to make sure that you switch efficiently. You're not actually being efficient at that point. So a few different remedies for this are to set a timer. So you can say, okay, I'm going to work for an hour, and then we're going to switch. Or you can switch halfway through the day, because I know sometimes when you have a lot of work and you need to commit it, sometimes you can't just do a push. Sometimes it's in a state that you can't commit it. So one option is just wait until lunchtime, push what you can, or do a live share, or just use the same computer, and then switch so that you can take turns and not get exhausted. Like we were just mentioning, breaks. Yes, this is my favorite gift right now. I do this so often that sometimes I don't get to what I'm supposed to do because I'm too busy going to. So I know for breaks, a lot of us, we feel like we have to be at our desk all day. We feel like we have to work. If we get up, if we snack, if we walk around the office, we're wasting time. We have deadlines. We know we need to reach these deadlines. We know we need to get our work in. And it's hard to get up sometimes and take a break. These are really important because breaks are what help you absorb all of the information that you just took in. If you don't take a break, your brain doesn't have time to condense that and mull it over and remember everything that you just learned or written. So, like it says on there, it just leaves room for new ideas to incubate. It helps prevent that mental fatigue I was talking about, where I know we've all gotten home at the end of the day. Even if we were sitting in a chair all day, we're exhausted. We're like, I'm going to bed. Talk to me. I'm tired. And so programming becomes less effective pair programming if we're too tired and we're fatigued and we're not taking breaks. So we want to make sure that we do things like set timers. Like I know the Pomodoro method is popular. I think that's the one where it's 15 minutes and then you take a break for 10 minutes. Or you can do a whole hour and then take a break. You can do 30 minutes. Just work with your pairing partner, with your mobbing group. Figure out what works best and take breaks based on that. And another point with this is focus. So if you're pairing, particularly in mobbing sessions, if one person is driving and one is navigating and the rest of the room is just kind of walking, it's going to be hard to pay attention. Even if you're trying, you're going to lose focus. And then when you pay attention again, you're going to be kind of lost and you're not going to know what's going on anymore. So that's another good reason to take breaks so that people don't start to lose focus. That's when you should start switching the driver and the navigators more frequently. And you want to make sure that you leave the session as little as possible. So you do want to take breaks, but you don't want to leave in between those breaks, because if you leave and you go to the bathroom or you get a phone call, you come back, you've lost context. So one thing that you can do if you do have to leave, because sometimes we have to, we gotta go to the bathroom and we can't wait, then you can just be the driver, because they're gonna have to briefly explain, the navigators are gonna have to briefly tell you, okay, this is what we did while you were out, here's where we're going now, and then you're gonna regain context more quickly than if you just came in and sat down in a chair. So here is why breaks are good. So I'm really big into studies. I really like peer-reviewed studies. And so I found one from current biology where they studied two groups. I always think it's musicians, but it's actually people who typed on a keyboard. So they had people learning how to type. And so one group took breaks, one group didn't. They just worked all day without breaks. And then the next day, the group that took breaks retained more information than the group that didn't. So I have a link in the study that I'll share with everybody later, because they have a lot more interesting stuff in there, and they break the data down in a more interesting way than what I just told you. So when we're mobbing and pairing, it's going to go right into discussing code. So I know it's hard when we're pairing or mobbing when we come to a fork in the road. Sometimes one person has an idea, another person has an idea. They're both good ideas, but you've got to decide which one to go with. So one way to do that is to argue in code, not about code, which is, I stole that from a few tips from mob programming and make that up. But that is to use examples in your code to prove your point, or whiteboard it. Don't just say, no, my way is right. Don't just say, I'm right and all of you are wrong. It might be, but you should prove why you are. So if you time box these discussions along with discussing the code in the code, then you can reach a resolution faster. You're not going to just debate back and forth all day and pontificate on which route to take to solve your problem. And time boxing can be hard because sometimes you start at a certain time, the timer goes off, you're still not done. So you shorten it, you go again, timer goes off, you're still not done. If that's happening, if it's a mob setting, you can say, okay, we need to stop and have a meeting about just this topic. If it's a pair setting, you can get someone else in the office to come help you. You can go get another engineer, you can go get a manager, you can get someone to come in and help bring another perspective, or just help you reach the solution. Maybe there's someone that is really good on the back end and your front end, you don't know what to do. So just go get someone that has a little more knowledge you can help. Okay, so how do you convince your boss or your team to let you pair? So there's a few things here. Pairing helps prevent mistakes, which you can see in this little, I like this little diagram because it shows you, here's the mistakes Navigator would make, the driver would make. In the middle are the actual mistakes. So when you have two people working together, the driver is going to see mistakes that the Navigator would make. Navigator is going to see what the driver would make. So you're going to catch more before your code gets into the PR. Or however you push it, I don't know, maybe you just say, strike the master. You're still going to have less mistakes. I can help you get work done faster because, for one, you're catching more mistakes right away. You don't have one person who's just stuck for 2 hours. Like, I can do this, no, I don't need to ask for help, because there's someone right there with them helping you through the solution. And it can lead to better design, which is something that I found from that same study that is mentioned right there. It's a 2002 study, though, so I know that's old, but it's still science, so I threw it in. And it's really good for mentoring new programmers and onboarding programmers. Because when you start a new job and you look at the code base, it can be overwhelming. You don't know what all is there. You don't know how any of it works yet. And so it's a lot easier if you can pair with somebody who's already been there. It can show you, oh, okay, well, here are our design patterns. Here's where we keep these folders. It's just easier to get somebody in and started right away. For mentoring, of course, that's obvious. You can have a more experienced programmer with a less experienced programmer, helping teach them why certain solutions work the way they do. These are some fun articles that I talked about, but I didn't make slides for. How to pair program the wrong way. That's one that's really fun. It starts out with, sit down and tell your pairing partner that they don't know anything and you know everything. Stuff like that. So it's a satirical one. It's funny, and it makes some good points. Some that you don't think about, like even just laughing. Like sometimes someone does something and they say something funny and you laugh, but then they are upset or embarrassed because they didn't know what to do. So it's good to be cognizant of things like that. So it makes a few points that are just good to keep in mind. Navigator and driver rules, that goes over basically what I told you about, but it does break it down a little more. And then you have a reference to share people. When pair programming goes bad, that's another one that's kind of like the first one, but less satirical and fun. And it still makes some good points, so you can make sure that you avoid some of those mistakes. I know one saying forcing programming 100% of the time for things that only one developer can do. that's not something that you want to use pair programming for. Remote pair programming, that's a good one. Is you always have somebody that's working from home or someone's sick, and that introduces a whole bunch of other challenges. Like, okay, well, they can't see this whiteboard if we need to whiteboard something. They can't hear these people before mobbing that are in the back. So it brings up some good points to get around that. Breaks, that's the study I was telling you about. So you can make sure I didn't lie to you about breaks. And also the pair programming study, that one is really good as well. It gives more data to back up why pair programming is faster, why design tends to be better, and how less mistakes are made. And it's going to be interactive, but I didn't know a good way to do it. So I'll share these slides. And if people want to pair program or try it, you can. I'm not going to make you. I'm not your mom.
Do it.
Do it. Okay. That went through that faster than I thought. Any questions for anybody?
Good job.
How would you first approach the topic of pair programming to your team, to your managers?
Yeah. Well, first you would need a reason. So if you see that work is getting done slowly, if you see some knowledge silos, like one person knows a whole lot about one technology and the rest of the team doesn't, if you have a lot of people that are new and need to be mentored, you can bring up that pair programming would be a good way to help solve those problems. You could use some of my fun studies with data to show your boss or your team.
So would you be able to pair program on multiple stories, or would that be considered mobbing?
You want to try to stick to one story for a pair or a mob, because if you have multiple stories and multiple people working on it, then you're still pairing. It's just different pairs working on different stories. And you can do it that way, but working on one story at a time is usually the way to do it if you want a pair or a mob.
Have you seen any articles on how best certain environments affect pair programming? Where I'm coming from with that question, I've been doing this since the 90s, and before it was even a buzzword and whatnot. So this is back when everybody had offices, and it was super easy because we could all pile in an office and we could all work together and whatnot. These days now I see huge open air places, and many places are like, you can't do that, and you're asking us not to work.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you have any experience or information on how to ensure an environment is conducive for that.
Yeah, we actually, at work, we set our desks up just so that we can pair. So there's room for someone to come and sit next to you on your credenzas. It's a fancy word for them, I guess. So you can do that. Just set up your desk space so that people have room to pair. You can get a room, a conference room. That was, I did see an article about that where they said they got a conference room. People got to bring their own keyboards, their own mice, computers. That sounds like a lot of work, but it's what this team did and it worked for them. That was actually in one of the articles I like to hear. I can find it later and share it with you if you'd like. Does that answer your question, or did that kind of?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I'm just looking for more because I don't know. I find a lot of these open air environments completely counterproductive. I do not understand who is putting information or where it's coming from that they're helpful.
Yeah, it can be. I know because we have an open office, and so sometimes there is a lot of noise. But we have a good amount of conference rooms too that we can go to if it's too loud, or we can just miss, For you.
The other departments might get annoyed with the engineering team always talking, but other than
That's true.
Exactly.
Then you can just say, do work.
Yeah.
Now, this is just me playing devil's advocate. If a manager were to rebuttal pair programming and say, well, I have two developers working on one story, that's taken away from half the time, what would be necessarily the response to that?
That, I would just go back to talking about how that's good for mentorship and preventing knowledge silos. Because if you have one person who knows a bunch of information that the rest don't, what happens when they're out, when they're on break, if they go to get a different job, then you lost all that knowledge. So I think that is probably the strongest point I would make. But I would also, I'm really big on my studies, so I would pull up a bunch of data and I would show them.
One thing I would add to that, and this is as a manager talking with executive leadership, ask them how long it takes them to move a refrigerator as an analogy. I mean, there are certain things that two people are going to move considerably faster.
That's a good point.
That's a good point. I like that.
And the mistakes part, like, just like, if there's more than one person looking at it, the amount of code review you have to do then is so much less because someone already intimately knows what you did within that code and can approve it faster.
Yes, that's true. Your PRs will go a lot smoother. Sometimes. Yes.
Are you supposed to work with the same person all the time, or do you switch at work?
No, it's actually good to switch. That is what when pair programming goes bad, it mentions that. It mentions pairing with the same person all the time, because then that's still a knowledge silo, because then you just have two people that know everything and the rest of the team doesn't. So you want to switch, because then you're also getting different experience levels together, you're getting different work styles, you're making sure that the team stays on the same page in general.
Is there any way to annotate who was working on that task? Like sometimes I see some code and I think, oh my gosh, what are they trying to do here? So I annotate and say, okay, this person wrote it, and I go there and ask them what this does here. So it's just one person, I imagine the driver. So is there any way to like add the navigator somewhere so that they're also responsible for that code?
I guess if you have, I know we use Jira and we put on our Jira tickets, we assign someone, so you can put a comment that says this person also worked on this. When you do a PR, you can put a description and a comment that says here's the pair or the mob that worked on it. If you don't have any kind of system like that, I'm sure you have a log somewhere where people say this pair worked on this story, this task.
Yeah, even GitHub or Microsoft Azure, depending what you use, should be able to have a comment functionality. Like you can just like at the select other user, they were on this too.
Okay. Make sure you blame your navigator.
Whenever possible.
Yes.
Did any of the studies talk about, I don't know if this is the happiness of teams that pair versus don't? Because
No, that would be something good to look for though.
Yeah.
Most of these were written by somebody who was on a team and did pair mob programming. And they claimed it was awesome, but you don't have the perspective of their team base. But that would be good to look for.
Yeah.
Not only happiness, but knowledge gain, how they advance through that knowledge gain, and those that pair versus those that don't. I mean, who excels faster in it? I'm pretty sure not even knowing how to code, I could answer that question, right? So, and there is somebody online that that was saying, I mean, when you're saying working in the open environment, that's just like clear space. So, but somebody online said, admittedly, that's why I work remote a lot. So I don't want to leave them out. So I wanted to share that with you.
Okay, yeah.
Hope you don't mind me intervening back
No.
here. I'm learning a lot.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Are there any particular situation that you choose mob over pair?
Yeah, so if we're working on a task or story where maybe only one person or two people know what's going on and other members of the team are new to the technology and they don't really know how to jump in and get started, that would be a good time to mob, because then that's a good learning opportunity, because you have at least one or two people who can navigate and the other people who drive to start learning. And then there's going to be an inflection point where the drivers are able to start picking up the knowledge and start going on the story on their own, and they can start navigating as well.
Can you see if anyone online had any questions? I don't know if they can hear me back here. Or you can just ask them.
I'm chatting it out.
Oh, okay, cool.
have many people done pair programming formally at work? Oh, nice.
I was a brand new developer when I first came onto my first team I was on. So I had a mentor from the beginning, we just pair program for most of my first few months. And that really helped me get used to the code base. It took me half a day to be able to get the whole code base up and running compared to a senior developer who had nobody and took 3 weeks and he still couldn't get anything done. So just even like the idea of setting up your code base with somebody there to kind of help troubleshoot if something breaks or like a package is super out of date was super helpful.
I know it's helped me a lot personally because I know if I'm for one all the time, it keeps me preparing sessions all the time. So it's a good way to learn new technologies and learn new solutions that you wouldn't have thought of yourself.
We actually had one of our team members leave a few weeks ago and move. And unfortunately, he was like the sole person on 3 fairly large projects. And up until the last week before, actually like the last 2 days before he left was when he got with a couple other people to like expand that knowledge. And now we're still like
Trying
a
to
black
to
hole.
come back.
Yeah, right? Just give him a call.
It also could be good for like your side projects. It's sometimes hard to have motivation to like actually code when you're on your own and not initially getting paid to do it. So just to have somebody to kind of, you know, bounce ideas off of, especially if it is your side project, it's not going to maybe have the same direction you put at work. So I would say pair programming is fun even outside of a work setting.
Yes, that's true. I know there's one site in particular where you can pair program with people. I don't remember what it's called, so it's not helpful for me to bring it up. But we can Google it.
I feel like, so at my job, we do recovery, but when you're explaining it, I'm like, we don't do that. Because sometimes it kind of just turns into like, I'm coding and the other person is just kind of like there. And if I have questions, it's like, hey, here's a question. But normally it's just like not, and I'm like, this is weird.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's not the right way to be. So
Yeah.
there's something going on here. So yeah, there's learning moments too, because you're just like, this isn't right, but also, are you not gonna help me? So I don't know. Yeah. Again, like you said, I don't know why I mentioned that.
Maybe they need the articles too.
Yeah.
Here's how you could do it better.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've been in that situation a few times, and that's when I say, okay, let's switch. I'll navigate, you can drive, because sometimes if you're not doing much, they don't know what to say. So sometimes I just switch, and then at least I can talk through it, because that's good for you too. It's good to be a navigator.
Yes.
You're still going through the solution, and you're explaining it and teaching it to someone else, so you're going to remember that better. So,
I think, as my team lead, I pair program with him, and I think what it is he's trying to get me to learn, like, you know, Mr. Miyagi. And I'm like, I don't like the wax on, wax off, so it's like, oh no, this is not fun. Yeah, for the most part, it's like something is off here.
yeah.
But the experience of kind of like we pair programmed on Friday, and it was like kind of awkward. I was like, do we need to do this? Like, I could do this on my own, but like if you just want to watch me code, I guess it's also, we use Tuple to pair program, so if people are remote and you are kind of looking for a tool, maybe that's a good thing to check out. They have I don't know if they have a free version, but we kind of did a free version, kind of like hacked a free version. So I don't know if that's a real thing or if we just hacked it. I don't really know. But now we have the paid version. So if anybody is kind of wanting to bring it up to maybe management or something like that, as far as like tools are concerned.
And it's called Tuple.
TUPLE.
Also, Visual Studio Code just started having live sharing. If you can actually code with people and everything. I really love it because like just to be able to actually actively see someone typing with you if you are remote or something, and free. It's a very nice free option.
What's it called?
Visual Studio Code. It's like a editor that I personally love working in.
You can share your server and your terminal as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I don't know how that works, but it does.
Because my person was able to like literally pull up the same app in the local as I was, so I was like, that's nice, I guess, cool.
It is really helpful for when somebody's remote, because then they can, it's not just you pulling up the app and saying, yep, I can see it.
Yeah.
There's a couple questions online. So any tips or advice when both developers have a huge gap in experience. So for example, senior/lead and entry-level pair.
Yeah, so that would be the entry level should be the driver in that case, and the senior engineer should be the navigator, because that's a good opportunity for them to teach and bestow some knowledge on the lower level engineer.
Okay, and that, by the way, was from Isabel. And then, is the slide deck going to be shared? I think we said it's going to be put on YouTube later after I give you guys the recording, right?
And I
It
can
will be online, and then you'll send us this link hopefully. And
yeah.
Actually, I have it. Yeah, I have the slides, so.
Yeah, Megan already has them.
Yeah.
She's on.
I got it.
There's another one. I second Isabel. Okay, so this is from Grace. I second Isabel's question because the only time when I've done pair programming, we were both really novice and didn't get a lot accomplished. In which situations, this is from Sindhu, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. In which situations will we apply pair programming?
For the novice one, if you're both novices, I think that would be a good opportunity to mob. If there's somebody else on the team that has more knowledge, they can come over and the two more novice programmers can take turns driving, and the more experienced programmer can kind of be the navigator and help them learn so that they know at least what's going on in the story that they're working on. If that's not an option, I mean, you can still research together, because you're still gonna, it's just like when you do a project in school, you have to work with someone and you're learning, you're both researching together and learning that information together. And the one for when to pair, just when to pair in general.
It says, I mean, when deadlines are nearer, and is pair part of Agile?
Valid.
Yeah, pairing, I would say, is part of extreme programming, which is a framework of under the umbrella of Agile.
Yeah, as far as pairing, if there's a deadline, I mean, if you need to split, you can. You know, if you both know what's going on, you can say, okay, I'll do this part, you do this part, and you might get it done faster, or you can just keep working together, because it tend to be worked done faster that way anyways. Just whatever works best for your team. That would be a decision between you and your pairing partner at that point to figure out how can we get this done in time.
And I asked them if that makes sense, and they said, yes, thanks.
Okay.
Actually, I think we often will too when we are up against a deadline. If there's like one big thing left in a sprint that's just not getting done, we all will all kind of get together and see, okay, how can we work together to accomplish the most important thing, rather than just bringing more work into the, so to be like, don't worry, Chrissy, you got that, or don't worry, Juan, you got that.
You're good. Bye. I'm always a fan for bringing a dog in to motivate you.
Could go the opposite way. Depending.
Yeah, I would get less work done.
Okay, I have an entry-level question. And so I'm more like cloud and infrastructure, and that's where I like to dive deep. But so when I'm learning about this and just listening to everyone tonight, so I know there's coding and then there's programming, right? I mean, it may not be as black and white as that, but in programming, is it still like beneficial to, pair, and do you still see mobbing?
I think of them as the same thing.
Yeah, same thing? Okay, just curious. I've been doing a little research trying to make myself sound a little smarter back here, so thank you. Also,
People online might pretend they're different, but
sure. Okay.
We could Google it.
thanks everybody.